Hello, and welcome to part 2 of how to fix headache, brain fog, weight gain, insomnia, gut pain, and joint pain. My name is Julie Crane, and I'm glad to have you here. So as I mentioned, this is part 2, so hopefully you've had a chance to already watch part 1. In part 1, we talked about, what it is that you may be experiencing that is due to dehydration. We talked about the modern lifestyle that you have that may be making you more dehydrated. We talked about some of the illnesses and diseases that can develop from dehydration or be exacerbated if you don't have proper hydration. And we went through and reviewed a self-assessment for dehydration. We talked about how proper hydration must also include absorption. So the cells need to be absorbing that water. And we talked about water is probably not enough. And I gave you a quick plan to get started. So today in part 2, I'd kind of like to go a little bit deeper into, the recommendations that we hear and why they may not be enough. So oftentimes what we've heard or, what's kind of been taught to us is to have 12 ounces of glass of water a day. But when you actually look at that can be traced back to an original governmental recommendation with hydration guidelines that's based on total ounces. So what may surprise you about this is that in those original guidelines that the government came out with, 45% of those ounces that they talked about came from food. And it was only over time that this morphed into ounces of fluid and then eventually became ounces of water only. So really, from the beginning, they were counting both fluids and foods to be part of those ounces that are required in order for us to be hydrated. Now, another recommendation you may have heard is the drinking, half of your body weight in ounces. And what I'd like to say is that hydration is really sensitive to many conditions. So where this might be a great just general guideline, I think we need to look at it from a deeper level and not just body weight. So for instance, what conditions do you live in? Are you in a more dehydrating type environment? So, in the summer, are you in a place like I'm here in Idaho, which is dry and desert? So it's going to be a much more drying environment than, say, Washington State, up with all the trees and the humidity, or down somewhere like Florida, where you're around the water. So what kind of conditions do you live in? Are you constantly impacted by recirculated air? How much humidity is in the air that that's in your typical environment? What about the medications that you're taking? We talked about that. And, are you older and have less muscle? So do you sweat a lot? Do you have a vocation where you do a lot of manual labor and so you're sweating quite a bit? Or maybe you're an athlete that's performing and working out all the time, and so you're sweating and losing fluid a lot. Also, what do you eat? Because what you eat can make a huge difference in how much fluid that you need. So it's really more about paying attention to your own body's signals and to those things that are, specific to you. Like I just mentioned, environment, activities, medications, age. So the 2 top signals that are really important to pay attention to are fatigue, especially if you're having that afternoon crash, and brain fog. And then right behind those, of course, are things like headache, stiffness, joint pain, irritability, low mood. And then dry tongue, dry mouth, and nasal passages are early signals too. So it's more about becoming in tune with your body and what your body's signals are. Now I want to talk a little bit about water. this is such an amazing thing. I think we've always maybe kind of underestimated what water is and what it can do for us. And it's actually much more sophisticated than originally thought. It's not just a liquid or a lubricant, but it's actually the major activator of chemical and electrical ignitions. So our body is mostly water, and it is also runs on an electrical current. So it's interesting because there's a research group from Cornell University that found that water actually forms a spine of hydration around DNA. And this change the change in a hydration state can actually lead to dramatic changes in the DNA structure. So again, saying that if you're in more of a dehydrated state, it can actually change the DNA structure in your body. Wow. Another thing that they found about water when it's at room temperature is that it actually is in flux. So it can't really decide if it's a low density or a high density form, and it's not sure which form it should be. So it actually results in this fluctuation of going between both of those. So in the molecular world, water is a vibrating continuum that's sliding in and out as phases and forms, but to the naked eye, when we see it, it just looks like it's water. And we don't know that it's having all this activity and doing all these things of moving from a low to a high density. Now, new studies and new science reveal that there's actually a different type of water that was never before recognized. And, science has always known that it could exist as a liquid, a gas, or a solid, but they've actually found that there is a fourth stage that's kind of a gel-like state of water that's actually 10% more viscous than the liquid state. And it's similar to the water that we find in plants. Now, when water slips into this gel state, it actually amplifies the water's life-giving properties. So that's so cool, right? Now, the science community hasn't actually settled on what to call this new phase of water. So currently it's being referred to by several different names. And some of those are structured water, gel water, EZ, the letters EZ, which stand for exclusionary zone water, liquid crystalline water, or ordered or coherent water. For the purposes of the next few parts that we'll be going over this, I'm just going to refer to it as structured or gel water. But what's important to know is that structured water is actually denser and has more oxygen. So while liquid water has a neutral charge, structured water actually has a negative charge. And this negative charge actually forms a battery and begins producing and storing energy inside our bodies. And this is the energy that we need to think, to move, to heal, and to repair. And this water is not only denser, structured water, but it's actually able to conduct all of our electrical functions even better. So a Dr. Pollack, he noticed how different water was when its molecules linked up over time and across space, and how together they became more and more tightly knit. He found that they were not quite like stationary, like an ice crystal, but rather they were overlapping and interlinked crystals, much like a lace or a crocheted netting, but still in a fluid state. So this structured water exists in all living cells and plants. We can't see the change in water with our naked eye, but it takes place at a molecular level. And what happens in this state is that water will actually hydrate more efficiently. The result is that you can actually drink less liquid, but yet be more hydrated. So accessing structured water, the best way is to combine water and plant material. So that's one way to be able to access structured water. The second way is you can purchase a several $1,000 machine, and that will structure your water. And the third is you can use a multipolar magnet. So this is a multipolar magnet. It's about the size of a credit card. You see it's very thin like a credit card. And what this does is, in order to use this to structure your water, and it's the multipolar magnet that creates that structuring that's similar to what you find in nature, is you can set a bottle or a glass of water on this magnet for 15 minutes or so, and it will structure your water. If you have a pitcher, it's like a gallon pitcher. I like to filter my water, so I run it through a filtering pitcher, and then I put the pitcher on this magnet and leave it for about an hour, and then it will be structured. If you have like a 5-gallon jug of water, you could put one underneath it. And I would say in a day, you would have that water structured. Now, the interesting thing about this structured water is how people who sometimes cannot tolerate water can tolerate water when it is structured. So what do I mean by that? Well, I attended, where I first learned about this, I attended a seminar, and there was a gentleman there who had not drank water in years. All he would drink was his particular brand of soda, a pop. And, when he went up and the physician worked with him, he did have quite a few problems. And you could just see by observing this man that his skin color was kind of gray. He looked tired and fatigued, and he did have some issues going on. And when the physician asked him about drinking water, he said that he just did not like the taste of water, that water tasted horrible to him. And so the doctor went ahead and did a presentation and had us taste bottled water that had not been structured. And then he gave us a bottle of water that had gone through the structuring process by using this magnet, and had us test for ourselves if we felt like there was any change to that water. And that's what I noticed. I felt like the water felt and tasted kind of almost silkier, creamier. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but even how it felt on my tongue and in my mouth was different. And this particular gentleman that the physician was working with had his taste of bottled water and just pulled a face and said it was awful. And then he tried the structured water and was like, wow, this tastes really great. And he went ahead and drank that bottle of water and was handed another bottle of water, because of course he was quite dehydrated because he had not been drinking water for a long time. So it's very interesting. So if there are people out there that have experienced feeling like they have an allergy to water, or that water just doesn't taste good, or in a recent workshop that I went to, there were a couple of people there that said that water actually hurts their throat. It kind of burns their throat and gives them a sore throat. Yet when they tried the structured water, they had a completely different reaction. So it would be an awesome experience or experiment to just try. I do have some of these. You can purchase these from me. So if you're interested in there, I have an email in the description, and you can send me an email and we can get together and see if you'd like to purchase some of these. These only run for like $20, so they're much less than purchasing a machine. So anyway, so structured water is pretty amazing. And by doing so, those people that really have trouble with drinking water may find that drinking water is a much more enjoyable experience. So what I would like to end with is just this reminder that your food choices can suck hydration right out of you, or they can hydrate you more profoundly than water alone. Did you know that an apple with a bottle of water actually hydrates better than 2 bottles of water alone? What? Yes. How does that work? Well, the fibrous materials in the apple serve as a sponge to hold the moisture inside itself longer and longer inside of you. So again, an apple and a bottle of water is going to hydrate you more than 2 bottles of water. And if you use a magnet and structure it, it will be even better. So that's what I'm going to end with today. In part 3, I'll expose the most dehydrating foods and actually provide a strategy for recovery if you're going to choose to eat those. I'll be sharing a list of the most hydrating foods, and we'll discuss the use of smoothies in hydration, and I'll even give you a couple of really great recipes. So I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you in part 3. Bye.